Hey everyone, I got something a little bit different on the channel today. A few weeks ago I was watching Forgotten Weapons. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that channel on YouTube before. The guy on there, he goes through rare, oddball, and as well as common rifles, pistols, muskets, just about any sort of weapon that does a little bit of history on them and goes through their workings. It's an interesting channel if you're interested in the mechanics of firearms. I like the mechanics of anything, and sometimes firearms are often as interesting to take a look at as the inside of a watch is. So if you watch his channel, you'll know that a lot of the weapons that he shows are stuff that I personally am probably never going to own. They're either very rare or very expensive, but he did this video on a pistol a few weeks ago and I recognized it. I realized that I had the same pistol. Now, this pistol actually came from my grandfather, and he got it in Europe during World War II. It was apparently given to him by an officer who he had been assigned to drive around. Basically, that was his job. And from what he told us, it seemed like he was in Europe around the time of the Battle of the Bulge. This is not technically a military weapon, or even necessarily a good pistol. It's got a sort of interesting history, both its history as well as my family's history with it. So let me take it out here and show you what it is. This is a Kohout and Spol made in Gdańsk. It's Czechoslovakian. They named the pistol the Mars. There was several pistols named that. This is the same pistol that Ian reviewed on his channel, and it's got a minor difference, though what I think might be an interesting difference, and it's something that for people who study these things might be interesting to them. This is basically a copy of an FN 1910. It was produced from 1937 to 1942. And then again, it was produced after that, 45 to 47. That's what Ian has come up with and what I've also read online. Germany invaded Czechoslovakia in, I believe it was 39. They allowed this company to continue to produce this weapon for civilians and police market. In 42, the Germans wanted to force this company to make this pistol for the German military, and this company refused. Not something I would have thought you could do, but apparently they did. And because they refused, they were shut down. So they did not reopen again until the end of the war. After the war, they produced till about 47. Now, according to Ian's research, only about 3,800 of these in total were made. This is 32 ACP, or in Europe it would be 7.65 millimeter. Now, if you look at the serial number here, I believe it's 8978, but the serial numbers are all mixed up, and like I said, according to his research, about 3,500 of these were made, which isn't a lot. So let's take a look at a couple of things on the outside here. On Ian's gun, we have a proof mark here. This is the proof house number, a Czechoslovakian proof mark, and then this number is the date that it was proofed, so 1940. However, on this particular pistol, we have another proof mark. I have looked at his pistol, I've looked at several pictures of other ones that have sold. One actually did kind of recently sell at Rock Island Auction, and it actually went for quite a bit more than I thought it would. That one did not have this extra proof mark. None of the other pictures of maybe 4 or 5 others that I've seen have this proof mark. So I'm not quite sure what it is. I'm going to rotate it so that you can get a look at it. Now, this is NPV. That proof mark is an Austrian proof mark for a type of powder that this uses, which is smokeless powder. At the time, they did put marks on the guns to make sure that you understood that this was a smokeless powder gun and not meant for black powder. And then below it, we have another mark. And what it looks like to me, right here, is a two-headed bird. I'm going to give a real still there. And then below those two proof marks, we have another number that's similar to the number up here. We have a 3-digit number, which I assume is when it was proofed, or the number of it when it was proofed, and a dot, and then 40 again. So I'm assuming that it's the same kind of nomenclature that's up here, and that this is the number when it was proofed, and then the date, so 40. So I have tried to find out what this proof mark is, this sort of double-headed eagle thing. Now it's a possibility that it goes this way, but I don't think so. I think it's in the same orientation that the MPV is. So if anyone knows what that proof mark is, I thought it might be Austrian, but I can't find an exact duplicate of this. I don't think it's German, because I have not found any German ones that uses a double-headed. It could just be another Czechoslovakia mark, or perhaps an occupied Czechoslovakia mark. I'm not quite sure, because there's no other pistols with this other extra proof mark on it. I'm not sure what it is. I also should point out it does have a safety right here. This is the safe position, and this is the fire position. It does not have something, though, that a lot of striker guns have that makes this, in my opinion, not something that I would want to carry. And that is, it has no way of telling if the striker is cocked from the outside of the gun. In other words, when you rack the gun, you have no way of seeing, there's no little protrusion knocking out here or anything. Nothing tells you that this gun is now in a fire ready mode. Alright, let me take it apart and show you a couple little interesting things from a machinist aspect of it. So here's the trigger assembly and disconnector. Very simple disconnector here. So when the gun is cocked, you'll see that the disconnector is just on the edge of the trigger. I got to hold this down a little bit so that it doesn't flop out. You pull the trigger and it fires the gun, and then holding the trigger, when you then cock it, not when you cock it, but when it cocks itself under load, it disconnects the trigger there. You can see that, until you release it, and then it goes back into position. Kind of interesting. It's very simple, probably about the simplest you can get on a firearm. Takedown is very simple. This unscrews the bushing cap at the front unscrews about halfway, or about a quarter turn, and then the spring should come out. Whoop, there it goes. Then you have to move the slide back a little bit. Rotate. You see how I rotated the barrel there? See, it's down, the locking lugs are down. And get that just right, get the slide just right, rotate the barrel up, and the whole slide will come off, like so. You take the barrel out, rotating it around to the right position, and it'll come right out. See, the barrel's a little crude at the feed ramp there. That's called a feed ramp. The locking lugs here are well done, but I think there's a manufacturer's defect in here. I'm not sure that that's wear. I don't know if you can see that very well. See that little, I think somebody had a bozo there that day. Still works fine. The spring does come off of here, and the cap does come out, but I'm not going to do that because it's just kind of a pain in the butt. A very hefty spring there. The top slide, the sight is kind of interesting from a machining aspect. It looks like it was just an end mill was just dropped into that slot and made basically a half moon cutout there, and that makes the space for the sight. The top is a little bit rough, I'd say. I'm not sure how that process was done. If you have any ideas, let me know. You see it's all integral. The sight is all machined together. The rear sight, it's all one piece, essentially. Oh. We have our striker. This is a striker fired. It does not have a hammer. That's all that means. There's our striker. I'm sure that that's hardened, still in good shape. Striker spring and a little guide rod in there. You see the inside here, we have some telltale machining marks. Clean that off. Some very obvious machining marks here. Of course, you have a dovetail, a square dovetail. Probably another name for that I don't know offhand. The ejector here is just a piece of spring steel that just grabs the edge of the case, and it's pinned in right here. The grooves on the top side are not quite even. They're good and they're very deep, but they're not quite even. You know, there's a few little things. If you look here on the end, you can see that this is a little bit, this side is a little bit wider than this side. That's something, you know, you can tell that this was made in a decent factory. You know, this wasn't made in China or Afghanistan. But it's got a few little things, a little quick things. The trigger right here, where it's kind of relieved, is a little rough. You know, they didn't do a lot of finishing. There you have your locking lugs, where the barrel locks into. You have your trigger right here. It drops down. That releases that sear, allows the gun to fire. The where the striker sits, where the striker spring sits, a little bit hammered up. So very simple piece. You know, you don't have a lot of pieces here. This holster actually came with it. It's really nicely made. Actually, it's some really nice thick leather. This kind of reminds me of like a European police holster of the time to me, or a military holster. Has an extra magazine in it that sits in this pouch here. And here is what the bullet looks like. Just a 32 ACP, 32 auto, or 7.65 Browning. And like I said, I have shot it. Shoots fine. It you know, you don't get a great sight picture, so it's not the most accurate gun in the world, but it's got a sort of a, from a nowadays standpoint, the grip is a little bit sort of to where your hand's cocked a little bit, but that's, you know, that's just the way they were. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed me sharing that, and I hope that, you know, maybe somebody can get something out of it. And if anybody knows what this proof mark is, please let me know. I would like to know what the history of it is before my grandfather got a hold of it. I don't think it was something that was taken from a German officer or anything weird, you know, or fun like that. It was just something that the officer that my grandfather drove for, that he picked up, whether on the civilian market or took it off somebody or what, not quite sure. We don't really have a good story on that. But interesting piece of history. So if you like that sort of thing, he did actually bring 2 other pistols back, and they are the same way. They're not technically military pistols, but they're a little, one especially is a little odd. I'll show you a quick shot of it. This is a folding trigger revolver that was made in Liège in Belgium. And compared to a lot of this, is kind of like a little common thing back then. Compared to a lot of them, this is a very well made and well machined little piece. Might be interesting to take a look at it. I also need to figure out what is wrong with it. It will not fire at this point, so we can take a look at that in a future episode. And there's also this, which is a little bit more common. These are called a baby Browning. This is not the Colt version. This is an actual FN Browning in 25 ACP. So just a quick look at those, and if you have any interest in seeing some more about those and taking them apart and just kind of checking out how they were made, let me know and we'll do that. So anyway guys, thanks for watching.